Congressional Capitals Part 9, the first United States in Congress assembled, convenes at the Philadelphia State House. On March 1, 1781, with Maryland's ratification complete, Congress declared the Articles of Confederation in force, launching the first federal government the United States and Congress assembled. The next day from Philadelphia, French Minister Luzerne reported to Vergennes, Congress celebrated the event with a public dinner. The great flag of the 13 states was displayed, the guns of the city and those of the port fired repeated salutes, all the bells were rung, and the day ended in fireworks. But the very next day a problem arose. Article 5 of the Articles of Confederation declared, no state shall be represented in Congress by less than 2 nor more than 7 members. New Hampshire and Rhode Island each had only 1 delegate present in the new Congress. Thomas Rodney of Delaware recorded this first constitutional exchange. New Hampshire's John Sullivan urged the states not be stripped of their vote overnight. Rhode Island concurred. North Carolina's Thomas Burke shot back, saying that the idea was absurd. In the end, Congress allowed single delegates to sit, debate, and serve on committees, but not to cast their states' votes. Thus, on March 2, 1781, the United States in Congress assembled, confirmed the Articles were fully in force, with Samuel Huntington presiding as the first president under the new government. Samuel Huntington would continue in office for 4 months, issuing letters, resolutions, military commissions, and even proclamations as president under the ratified Articles of Confederation. On May 4, 1781, after months of wrangling, the Confederation Congress adopted 35 standing rules to govern business of the United States under the Articles, sharply curbing presidential authority. Until then, President Samuel Huntington had controlled the mail, set the agenda, managed debate, appointed committees, and even decided when to adjourn. After the rules were enacted, all those presidential prerogatives were stripped away. Mail-in reports went straight to Congress. The agenda was fixed by rule, not by the chair. Committee reports and petitions were scheduled collectively. Debate required 9 states, and order was set by vote. Ordinance and motions had to be written, read aloud, and voted step by step. Committees were filled by ballot, not appointment. Any member could demand adjournment or an order of the day. And finally, order and discipline rested with the whole House. These reforms grew from a deep distrust of centralized power, echoing the 1777 framers' rejection of John Dickinson's stronger 1776 draft. The President of Congress was pared down to a parliamentary chair, announcing motions, recognizing speakers, stating questions, yet remained in practice the nation's nominal head of state. It was assumed Samuel Huntington would serve as president until the November election, but on May 8, 1781, he requested leave to resign. Congress scheduled a new election. The results were scattered, with no one drawing more than 2 votes, so the members asked Huntington to remain. As John Witherspoon told Richard Henry Lee, the presidency was postponed sine die, and Huntington would likely continue until November 5th, when the Second United States in Congress assembled was constitutionally scheduled to convene. By July, Huntington's health collapsed, as had Hancock's and Lawrence before him. On July 6th, he resigned, citing illness. 2 days later, Thomas McKean wrote to Samuel Adams that Huntington's departure left the presidency going a-begging. McKean noted that while some delegates longed for a strong, almost kingly figure, most resisted. On July 9th, Congress held its first presidential election under the Articles of Confederation. Samuel Johnston of North Carolina was chosen, but the very next day he declined the office. Historians note that although Johnston's election is recorded in the handwritten journals, he never took the chair. On July 10, 1781, the journals record, Mr. Samuel Johnson, having declined to accept the office of president, and offered such reasons as were satisfactory, the House proceeded to another election, and the ballots being taken, the Honorable Thomas McKean was elected. McKean, a Delaware delegate, accepted, and thus became the first elected President of Congress under the Articles of Confederation. Thomas McKean's presidency broke the mold. He served as Delaware's delegate while simultaneously sitting as Pennsylvania's Chief Justice, provoking sharp criticism from Philadelphia. McKean got right to work. On August 7, 1781, he alerted George Washington to the brutal treatment of American prisoners and backed retaliation measures. Created in January 1781, but left vacant for months, the Department of Foreign Affairs was finally activated on August 10, 1781, when, at McKean's urging, Congress elected Robert R. Livingston of New York as its first secretary. Congress chose Livingston for his gravitas as New York's chancellor, a former delegate and member of the Declarations Committee of Five, with a measured nationalist profile acceptable to states' rights delegates. Livingston also balanced McKean and Robert Morris geographically, was stateside while Franklin, Adams, and Jay were abroad, and maintained solid ties to Minister Luzerne and New York's merchant finance circles. As the Franco-American strategy pivoted south, McKean pushed lagging states for delegates and militia. He relayed intelligence to Admiral de Grasse on Generals Clinton and Cornwallis, and worked with Pennsylvania to equip Major General Arthur St. Clair's troops. Those forces proved mission critical, deterring a British strike at Philadelphia and Delaware Bay, protecting Congress and Robert Morris's financial hub, steadying the Pennsylvania line after the January Mutiny, shepherding the Allied forces' passage through the city, and standing ready to help contain British strongholds around Yorktown. On September 2nd, President McKean reviewed the Allied American columns and Rochambeau's French troops as they marched through Philadelphia towards Yorktown. While the officers rendered military salutes as the colors passed, McKean likely doffed his hat rather than the modern hand-over-heart gesture that some 20th century writers have maintained occurred at this event. After Yorktown's capitulation, McKean led the national celebration. On October 26, Congress ordered a day of Thanksgiving, issued formal thanks and honors to Washington, Rochambeau, de Grasse, Greene, and key officers on October the 29th, and moved to memorialize the victory at Yorktown with a marble column. A century later, a granite victory monument finally rose at the corner of Bacon and Main in Yorktown, where it stands today. McKean resigned on October 23rd to sit at the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, but he was recalled the next morning and resumed the chair, presiding through November 3rd, 1781. On that day, the journals record the important event that Congress received a petition from the Supreme Executive Council of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, stating a dispute with Connecticut over the lands on the east branch of the Susquehanna and praying a hearing pursuant to Article 9 of the Confederation. With this, the first session of the First Federal Congress under the Articles of Confederation came to a close. From the meeting rooms of Philadelphia's Carpenter's Hall in 1774 to New York's Federal Hall in 1790, 11 historic buildings served as seats of America's Continental, Confederation, and bicameral Congresses. To celebrate the 250th birthday of the United States of America, we created a richly illustrated 2026 calendar, which presents the architectural, political, and cultural history of each of the 11 congressional capitals, where the foundations of the United States were laid. Each month, the calendar features a full-color depiction of one of the congressional capitals, an architectural and historic profile of the building, the political context and key legislation enacted within its walls, daily notations of the pivotal U.S. founding events tied to their actual anniversaries. Far more than a calendar, this is a portable historical exhibit bringing together forgotten capitals, overlooked debates, and legislative milestones that transformed a group of colonies into a functioning republic. Perfect for the historians, educators, students, and all who wish to follow the nation's path from independence to the Constitution, month by month. To order, visit www.historic.us/CAPITOLS.